Hello, welcome back to Jump To It for IrishRacing.com. In today's show, we're going to be looking at 4 key races at the Cheltenham Festival after entries were declared last week. So we have the Arkle, the National Hunt Chase and the Brown Advisory, as well as the Turner Chase, formerly the Marsh. And joining me to discuss the entries and the Antepost angles, once again, I'm joined by Stephen Harris, Ed Quigley and Vincent Finegan from IrishRacing.com. Stephen, I'll start with you. What do you make of the Arkle and the entries this year?
This could be a really cracking race. I mean, I think the two to concentrate on are the two obvious ones. Edwardstone, who's improved dramatically over fences this winter, and the favourite Ferny Hollow, who's going to be one of the short-priced bankers of the week. I mean, Edwardstone's actually amazed me because, I mean, I liked him as a hurdler. I backed him probably 4 or 5 times in huge field handicaps. And my notes were always, wants decent ground in the spring, smooth traveller with a turn of foot, doesn't always settle, needs a big field to drop the bit. And those sort of views have been proven completely wrong over fences because he has developed into a real thorough stayer in soft ground this winter, and he jumps really economically. Now, the flip side to that is, and something I bore on about all the time, as everyone else will know, is that I suspect the Irish form is at least a stone better than the English form in it. And it's quite possible that Edwardstone has been beating the same sort of horses with a good make-up, the run of the race from off the pace, and he might not be as good as that looks. Whereas Ferny Hollow, who won the 2020 champion bumper in remarkable style, having had his run checked about 5 times and storming up the hill, and that form with Appreciate It and Third Time Lucky is absolutely bomb-proof. It's been lightly raced since, but he's gone chasing this winter. He's jumped superbly. I mean, the win last time out, where he gave nearly a stone to Riviere de Tal, was absolutely fantastic. It was one of the best novice races you'll see. I suspect that is the standout piece of form. I don't know where Ferny Hollow's going to go next. I'm sure he'll probably have one more run. Although he's been a lightly raced horse, he's only had a handful of runs since that champion bumper in 2020. So he probably hasn't been the easiest, but he's trained by a genius. He's a short price. I actually wouldn't be surprised if he got quite a lot shorter. What will happen with this race, Joe, is the opposition will melt away. It looks like Edwardstone and Ferny Hollow are going to run. You'll end up with about 6 runners in total, that they will shy away and look for other opportunities rather than take these 2 on, I suspect.
And Ed, I can see you nodding along off screen as well with Stephen's roundup of this race. But what's your take on the Arkle? I think you spotted some value maybe elsewhere from the head of the market.
Yeah, just very quickly, the first thing to say is Joe, I believe, according to connections, you're going to get Ferny Hollow, Blue Lord and Riviere de Tal all going for the Irish Arkle in the Dublin Race Festival in a fortnight. That's 3 of the top 4 in the market. So obviously Ferny Hollow pulverises those 2. He's going to be 2's on shot to win the Arkle in the aftermath of that, isn't he? Because there's going to be no one left to turn up with a feasible chance. However, as an Antepost punter, if you think there's a vulnerability in him and one of the others, those 2 do turn him over, then it becomes a very interesting betting heat, doesn't it? But look, it's going to be small fields. Outside of that, the home contingent are led by Edwardstone, who has been very good this season over fences, it has to be said. I just think perhaps I know Dan scouted. He got a little bit tetchy, for want of a bit of a phrase, on he thought it was a bit insulting, the fact he was a 20-1 poke, 3rd time lucky. I don't think he's probably on balance good enough to win this, but I do think he's the wrong price, and I do think he'll start a single figure price on the day. His 2 wins in the autumn at Cheltenham, you can question the form all you like, but on quick ground, on the old course at Cheltenham, he pinged around there and absolutely devoured those fences. He came totally unstuck on soft ground at Sandown, which I think was his 3rd run in 5 weeks as well. I think it was just too much for the horse, bless him. He needs a little bit of a break. I believe he might go to the Kingmaker on February the 12th at Warwick, where he possibly will bump into Edwardstone, or he goes straight to the festival. I like to see him, as much as we want to see racehorses, just go straight to the Arkle, a bit of good to soft ground, ping off in front. Again, you start going through the entries to this, Joe. This is going to be a 6-7 runner Arkle, 3rd time lucky. No way on how does he start 16-1 for this race. He'll be a 7-8-1 shot tops on the day. Probably won't be good enough, but as an each-way anti-post play now, I think you're, at least if you're an exchange player, you've probably got the option to green up as well. Look, I think it's Ferny Hollows to lose, but at the prices, I think 3rd time lucky is the wrong price, would be my view.
And Vincent, let's have your take. I think you're siding with Stephen and like what Ed's touched on there with Ferny Hollow, right?
There's no reason why Ferny Hollow, all things being equal, he turns up in Cheltenham in fine form, presumably after winning, he runs in the Dublin Racing Festival. If he wins there, He's going to be a very short price turning up in Cheltenham. The Irish are going to get in behind him. Sure, why wouldn't you? Is the bottom line. So he 11 to 10 seems a skinny price, but probably is fair value when you start looking at it and what's going to end up on the day. The other side of it is Willie Mullins has another horse in this Blue Lord. I really like this horse. I think he jumps great. He's been impressive in a couple of easy wins over the minimum trip as well. I kind of feel he needs further than 2 miles, but just knowing Willie Mullins and the way he goes about this, he'll run him here. I'm nearly sure he will. And so I could see Ferny Hollow beating Blue Lord, and I can also see Third Time Lucky being a contender. If you could do an Antepost TriCast, I wouldn't mind a little 50p of that, just at the prices, because at the moment that would probably pay, I don't know, 150, 200 quid. And Third Time Lucky has a squeak now, 4th to Ferny Hollow in the champion bumper, has very good form at Cheltenham, 6th in a county hurdle, 2 course and distance wins as well. Could see that run a decent race. Whether it depends on what we're going to see. As we said, the entries are going to cut up hugely here, because presuming Ferny Hollow stays in one piece, has been lightly raced, admittedly, over the last couple of years. But if he turns up in Leopardstown and wins at the Dublin Racing Festival and presumably wins impressively, you could see a very small field here. But I do think Blue Lord will turn up here, and probably at the Dublin Racing Festival as well. He'll be kind of a second string in behind them both times.
So as the guys have maybe hinted at with especially Third Time Lucky, there's value to be had, but perhaps ease off in terms of lumping on at this early stage. So just to round up the selections for the Arkle, Stephen and Vincent with the favourite Ferny Hollow, and Ed Quigley with Third Time Lucky. All right, let's move on to the National Hunt Chase, now where we have the field headed by Run Wild Fred. Stephen, take us through your take on this race. What do you think of it? And worthy favourite for you?
Well, I do think Run Wild Fred is the most interesting runner at this stage. I'm a bit devastated. I thought Ahoy Senor would have been absolutely ideal for this, and he's not been declared in the latest round of declarations. He was done for pace by Bravemansgame at Kempton, didn't jump particularly well, but I can see a real slog in the mud suiting Ahoy Senor. Maybe they'll wait another year. Maybe it's too soon for him. He's only a young horse with lots of potential. I do think Run Wild Fred is the most interesting runner. He ran once over 3 mile 5. It's the only time he's tried it in his career, and he was second in the Irish Grand National, having been absolutely hammered in the market. They've stayed at 3 miles since. He's come back better than ever this season. I think they'll lay him out for this race. He's liable to be ridden by the best amateur there is, and I thought he was the standout contender. It's not a race I've got a strong view on, but I can see why he's favourite and very popular.
And I think, Vincent, as well, you're kind of siding with the favourite in this for you.
Oh, I think this could be one of the bets of the Cheltenham Festival, to be honest with you. This horse, loads of experience, stays all day and jumps like a buck. All the things you want for this type of race. One interesting thing here is that Gordon Elliott has a fantastic record in it. He won the race last year with Galvin, who is now a major Gold Cup contender. With that, Jack Kennedy rode it last year because the amateurs weren't allowed to ride due to COVID. So that'll be one for all the quiz questions in about 10 years' time. Who's the only professional jockey to win the amateur race at Cheltenham? But when you start going through the entries for this, there's a bit of a problem here. There's quite a few of them aren't qualified for this race currently. As far as I know, you have to run over 3 miles over fences before you can run in this race. And you've got the likes of Statler and Capodanno haven't done that yet, and they're high up in the betting. I think there's other horses in it that I don't think will go for this race for obvious reasons that they probably won't stay, to be honest with you. Run Wild Fred at 4-1 looks fantastic value for me. The other thing to take note of in this race, if you're looking at having a bet, is at this stage, we know the horses that are entered, but we don't know who the jockeys are that will ride them. And this is always extremely significant in this race. The last 10 runnings of this, when amateur riders were in it, which they're back this year, we've had Jamie Codd has won it 3 times, Patrick Mullins twice, Derek O'Connor twice. You need a top amateur on your horse to win this race. There is no doubt about that. And presuming that Run Wild Fred will most likely be ridden by Jamie Codd, I think 4-1 is probably a fantastic price because he won't be that on the day, and several of these others that haven't qualified yet for the race most likely won't run. There's plenty of others in it that have other targets and most likely won't run here either.
Well, I was going to touch on that with Ed. I mean, how important for you is it seeing that the jockey name on a horse? I mean, how much are you going to back a horse based on that factor?
Well, in this race specifically, it's a huge factor, isn't it? Not so much in like the grade ones. If you think, I tend to go with the horse, not the jockey. If you see what I'm saying. However, yeah, it's definitely it's definitely something to factor in. Of course, we're not really going to be privy to that until one of the trainers have had a few too many shandies on the Cheltenham preview night and let slip the pre-arranged jockey bookings for a few of these horses, have we? But look, I think Run Wild Fred is a fair favourite. I think it's a little bit more open than perhaps the gents letting on here. I just wonder if there's a lurker in the pack here at 12-1. That's the Gavin Cromwell trained Vanillier, who, let's face it, hasn't exactly set the world alight over fences. I admit that. He was third last time out behind Run Wild Fred and Fury Road. But he came alive at Cheltenham last year. I mean, that Albert Bartlett performance lives fresh in my memory. I mean, he absolutely pulverised the field by 11 lengths in that Grade 1 at the Cheltenham Festival. I love Cheltenham form. The ground dried up a little bit for him, and he really did come alive. He's a double-figure price, and to me, he just looks like a relentless galloper. A lot of Albert Bartlett winners are traditionally, just proper stayers. And I could see him being a big part of this, up to 3 miles, 6 furlongs, back at Cheltenham, the scene of his finest victory. I wouldn't rule him out at 12-1. Of course, totally unknown to us 8 weeks in advance what the riding arrangements are. But I'm sure Gavin Cromwell will get someone smart on board. And listening to Gavin Cromwell interviewed a couple of days ago, it sounds like he's going to head straight to the race. This horse has got no issues with being qualified or anything like that. So, yeah, for me, he's 3 times the price of 1 Mile Fred. Okay, he was a bit behind him last time out, but I think the combination of return to Cheltenham and the step up in trip can at least narrow that gap. And I think he's the each way angle at a double figure price.
Lovely. All right, just to wrap up or to summarise the selections from the team for the National Hunt Chase, we do have Vincent and Stephen on the favourite Run Wild Fred, and then Ed Quigley going with Vanillier. So let's move on to the Brown Advisory, which I think, Stephen, you've touched on already with a potential rematch between Bravemansgame and Ahoy Senior. But take us through your thoughts for the Brown Advisory.
Yeah, I mean, I think Bravemansgame is the standout contender here. He's jumped. I mean, he's won both his starts over fences, and then he went to Kempton. The way he jumped at Newton Abbot, I've never seen anything like it first time out. He gained half a length from his rivals at every single fence. At Kempton last time over Christmas, I thought it was an incredible price. I think he went out to about 11-8 to beat Ahoy Senior. I thought he'd be much, much shorter than that. I must admit, got the market completely wrong. I don't think Kempton is Bravemansgame track. It was too sharp for him. I don't think his jockey was ever particularly happy, but he just devoured the ground up the straight and outstayed them. Ahoy Senior did not jump well enough that day. I think he's going to be a sort of Grand National type horse down the line. Ahoy Senior needs a real stiff test of stamina. Bravemansgame, I'm not absolutely sure he's going to run at Cheltenham. That's the other thing. But if you're going to play Antepost, non-runner, no bet. I mean, I think Paul Nicholls and Dan Skelton, among others, found the whole experience of Cheltenham last year so chastening. They were sort of red in the face with their binoculars looking out the back of the third last when the Irish horses were coming up the hill, race after race after race. All their champions disappeared. And I think they thought, well, we're never flipping doing this again, at least not till we've got some proper horses. And I wouldn't be surprised if Bravemansgame swerved Cheltenham as well. But that being said, there's so many races to choose from now. And the Brown Advisory looks the obvious target. He ran really well, I thought, in hindsight, over hurdles at Cheltenham at the festival behind Bob Olinger last year, Bravemansgame, perhaps doing too much too soon when he was a young, inexperienced horse. His jumping over fences is a massive asset. He'll get a positive ride. This is another race. This won't be many runners. This will be less than 10 runners on the day for sure. They'll all dissipate to all the various different events they can run in. And I thought Bravemansgame was a solid choice here.
And Vincent, I'll bring you in here as well. We touched on Fury Road actually in the last race we were talking about, but let's bring him in. Your selection for this one is Fury Road. Tell us why.
Well, based on the fact that I think he'll most likely run here rather than in the 4 miler where Gordon Elliott has another major contender in that. So I'm hoping he runs here, and I would have thought non-runner, no bet. You could do worse than taking 10, maybe 12-1 Fury Road. He was a decent hurdler, but he looks to be a better jumper of fences. And in first-time cheap pieces the last day, he ran out an easy winner. 8 lengths he beat Run Wild Fred in Leopardstown in a Grade 1 chase. That was a hell of a performance. He had some good horses in behind as well. maybe you can't take too much into it because the fence is omitted due to the low-lying sun that day. But Fury Road is a fair horse, jumps well, stays, has to be a contender. But the big one here is we've got Gallopin Des Champs, I'm presuming, is the obvious favourite here, and possibly unbeatable is the answer to that. He needs decent ground. He was awesome in Leopardstown at Christmas. He turns up, there'll be no second here. Bravemansgame or not. Bravemansgame has looked like a hell of a horse, in fairness, much better chaser than a hurdler. He was only third to Bob Olinger last year in the Ballymore, but he definitely improved over fences. 3 excellent chase starts. He's obviously got a good chance if he turns up. I don't think he beats Gallopin Des Champs, and I don't think Fury Road will possibly beat either of them, but just at an each way value in what could turn out to be a small enough field, because if Gallopin Des Champs turns up here, no one else is really going to want to run.
Yeah, and Ed, that's what I want to get your perspective on as well. The favourite here, Gallopin Des Champs. I mean, I know you're going for Bravemansgame at this stage, but talk to us about the favourite.
Yeah, at this stage and at the prices, I mean, let's not forget Bravemansgame didn't win a Grade 1 over the Christmas period. Gallopin Des Champs, as much as he looked absolutely spectacular, you got to question that form to some extent. It'd be interesting. It sounds like he's going to the Dublin Racing Festival. I think there's a novice chase over the extended 2 miles and 5 furlongs, where you'd think something will turn up and put a bit more pressure on him at that level. It's a similar angle here, though, with Ferny Hollow, I suppose, just to play devil's advocate. I mean, if he turns up to Dublin Racing Festival, wins 10 Lakes hard-held again there. He's a 4-9 shot, and we've got another 6-runner field. And yeah, horses may just start running in different directions from him. But at the same time, if something could give him a real race, he doesn't quite have that aura of invincibility about him after the Dublin Racing Festival, then maybe a few people will think, here we go, we can have a go at this. Look, let's not get carried away with him. He's won 1 race over fences at a relatively low level to what this will be. It'd be interesting to see him up in grade in a couple of weeks' time. I just thought at the prices now, Bravemansgame is a spectacular jumper of a fence. I mean, he went to Newton Abbott first time out, which, to be honest with you, I could probably jump those fences in truth. As I was a bit kind of on the fence, I thought, well, okay, let's see him next time out. I mean, Haydock, he was sublime. I mean, he jumped around there like an old hand, didn't he? And then at Kempton, he got in close on a couple of occasions. He's very quick, very nimble. He's really fast over his fences. He gains length at his fences. So, in answer to your question, Joe, I mean, I'm usually got my long shot goggles on here, trying to find something at 25 to 1 or something I think can really come in the picture. I think this is between the kind of protagonists, the top 3 and the 4 in the market. I think it'll be those kind of 3 or 4 will be lining up with, plus a couple of others. In regards to Ahoy Senor, I actually spoke to Peter Scudamore last week, and whilst they're not saying they think he's going to go and win this race by any stretch of imagination, they are confident that on a stiffer track at Cheltenham, which definitely plays more to the stamina side of things, they think they can narrow the gap with Bravemansgame on a track which would be much more in his favour. Kempton, very much a speed-orientated track for a huge galloper like Ahoy Senor, probably didn't play to his strengths. You know, previously to that at Newbury, on a big galloping track, he looked very good. So I think it's between the top 3 and the 4. The prices at the moment, if you ask me who I go with Bravemansgame. And again, I think that like a lot of these anti-post markets, there's going to be a dynamic, huge shift in the anti-post races after the Dublin Racing Festival in 2 weeks. This will blow a lot of these horses' chances either out the water and totally change the way we look at these contests from an anti-post perspective.
All right, well, let's just sum up the team selections for the Brown Advisory. So, yeah, Stephen and Ed on Bravemansgame and Vincent on Fury Road at a bigger price, looking for some potential value. Now we're going to move on to the final race we're going to look at is the Turner Novices Chase, formerly the Marsh. Now, Stephen, I want to get your perspective on just the names of these races at Cheltenham. What's your take on it? How could it be a bit easier?
I'm glad you've asked me that, because I've been in far too good a mood, not moaned at all for this whole show. I mean, these they should not be allowed to keep messing around with them. It's no good to anybody. I mean, I watch racing 7 days a week, don't miss a race and all the rest of it, and like to think I know what's going on. No idea which race was what, which one's changed. They've changed the running order. Cheltenham, okay, we've got 4 days now. We're going to end up having 5 at some point, but they need to decide upon the names and just leave it and leave the running order the same. I mean, you've now got another real rant of mine is the last day of the festival, which fizzles out to nothing now. We used to have a brilliant grand annual to finish with a cracking 2-mile race where everyone had a bet, and now it just ends with a whimper with another impossible. You know, there's no planning goes into it. And these name changes, you now don't really know which race it was once, and they've changed the names again. Anyway, that's enough about that. In this particular race, Joe, I think Bob Olinger is going to be one of the shortest priced horses of the day. He's going to be another banker. It's getting boring, but what happens at Cheltenham now is that de Bromhead, I think, has said that Bob Olinger is going to run in this race. and everything else will get scared off. He's a short price. I think he was 6-4 earlier in the week. He's now about 11-10, something like that. He'll end up getting shorter and shorter and shorter because other horses will run elsewhere. He's won 2 from 2 over fences. He's got track form in the book. He's a thorough stayer. His jumping perhaps could be a little bit more polished, but that'll come with experience. And he's been winning at a time when de Bromhead hasn't been running that well. 1 or 2 of his has been disappointing. So he will be at his peak on the day. He'll be a very short price, and I think he'll win barring accidents.
And Ed, for you, I mean, we were speaking off air about Bob Olinger as well. Potential concerns over his last run for you?
It wasn't as. I think people went a little bit overboard about it. You know, some of the things I was reading, you know, it was like we just watched Arkle win on the bridle. I mean, he watched the race back just objectively. He did come off the bridle, entering the home straight, and Rachel had to ask him to go through the gears. I thought, well, hang on a minute. I thought he would have picked Capodanno up on the bridle. But when she did ask him to go, bang, race was over in a matter of strides. Was it? Look, he's a class horse. We know that. There was a bit of fiasco, a couple of fences missed out of low sun and everything. And on his chase debut, he was a bit skew at a few. I think he's still work in progress in terms of the jumping side of things, but we know he's got the engine. What is interesting is, does he have another run? Now, this is the big thing. I think it was you don't usually see it, but Henry de Bromhead in the aftermath very much said, look, we'll think about the Dublin Racing Festival. I'd like to get another run into him, especially at kind of high level. But a couple of hours later, he was interviewed, and he almost, I don't know whether he had a discussion with owners or what happened, but he almost seemed to pour a bit of cold water on that and was very much kind of insinuating the head straight to the Marsh Chase. Now, I just wonder if it's in the back of Henry de Bromhead's mind. Could we have another Envoy Allen Part 2 on his mind here? You know, he's won 2 novice chases at odds of 1-3 and 1-2. And could he just come unstuck in the heat of the battle with Cheltenham with 70,000 people there? You know, Envoy Allen did this last year. I think won 3 races at 1-8, 1-4, 1-3, barely tested. It came to the big day and he just made 1 error. And that was it. I think it's in the back of his mind. Does he want to get one more run into him for that experience, or does he not? Does he leave the horse fresh? Either way, he's the best horse in the lineup. But I just thought there's others in here which have got good chances. Long Press is a wonderful jumper. Probably doesn't have the engine that you could argue Bob Olinger has, or the natural class, but he's excellent. And I just thought there are a couple of others in here that will at least give him a race on the day. Again, well, all these novice chases will probably cut up to 7-8 runner races. But I'm not totally bought on the Bob Olinger and the Bob Olinger honeysuckle double is all I keep hearing. I'm not totally sold on it yet. I would actually like to see Bob Olinger have 1 more run over fences just to finely tune everything in the jumping department.
So which horse are you actually going for then, Ed, from your long shot goggles?
I would go with non-runner, no bet proviso. I would underline that. Jungle Boogie is a horse which the Mullins has made very straightforward by entering him in the Arkle, there we are. I'm doing it again, getting the names of the races wrong. He's entered in the Arkle, the Turners, the Festival Novices, and the National Hunt Chase. And they might as well enter him in the Mares Hurdle as well, just to make things more exciting. But he's a horse who's seldom seen on a racecourse, but he won a maiden hurdle by distance, and then his run at Fairyhouse on Chase debut was really exciting. I mean, he absolutely pinged those fences to win by a dozen lengths. David Casey, of course, representing the stables there that day, said, look, the battle for him is just keeping him in one piece and getting him on the track. I think he is a player if he lines up in this contest. And if he does, again, it's one of those, he will start significantly shorter. I think he's been referred to as the Jack Wilshere of horse racing on a few panels, which is a little bit unfair on poor Jack, given his injury history and everything. But, this horse has only made the race course 3 times. When he has been on the course, he's never looked like losing. He's the non-runner, no bet play angle, Joe, in a race which I think is a bit of a minefield if you take the favourite out of it.
And for you, Vincent, as well, I mean, how far beyond Bob Olinger can you be looking at this stage?
Well, the first thing with Bob Olinger is, in my opinion, we haven't really been proven that he jumps very, very well, which is what he's going to need to do if he's to win this race and win it impressively, as we expect he will. But so far, we've only seen him twice. The first day in Gowran Park, he made mistakes at the third last and the last in Gowran Park. Just as the race starts to hot up, he made a couple of mistakes, which, okay, first time out over fences, we can totally excuse that. And there's no issue around it. He goes to Punchestown then the other day with the Capodanno race. The problem is there were 3 fences omitted there, all at a crucial stage. That had 3 of the last 4 kind of taken out of the race. I'd like to have seen him jump those fences to be absolutely convinced that he jumps well enough at speed, under pressure, to do it on the day in Cheltenham. I was hoping he would have another run at the Dublin Racing Festival. That's beginning to look like maybe he won't. I'm not certain at this stage that he does go there. I definitely want to see him jump another couple of fences in public before I'd be rowing in at such a short price for what's probably going to be a relatively competitive race. Maybe not the most competitive of these 4 races we've discussed, but at the same time, you're going to have to be on your game to win a race like this, and he's a very short price. So for me, at the moment, I'd be staying away from him at the price. There's 44 entries for this. The vast majority of them are entered, multiple entries across all of these races, like Ferny Hollow, Bravemansgame, Fury Road, Galopin des Champs, River de Tel, Run Wild Fred. They're all entered here, but none of those will run here. So I'm looking at the fact that there's one horse, another Willie Mullins one. He's got such strength and depth with these novices anyway. In the Arkle, I think he's going to run Ferny Hollow and Blue Lord. They're the most likely ones to run. He has others in it as well. But I just thought this Saint Sam, it's only been entered here in the Arkle. Presuming Mullins' other horses turn up in the Arkle, there's a chance that he'll switch Saint Sam here. Saint Sam was second in the Boodles last year at the festival. So that's a good sign. He's run at the festival before, he's run well. And then he was very impressive on his debut over fences at Fairyhouse the last day. Like the decent level of form. There's a horse, another Willie Mullins horse ran in that race that also finished second to Blue Lord previously. Saint Sam beat the horse a lot further than Blue Lord had, and the horse had a run. I think that was a fair performance. You're looking at 20-1 at the moment, but the one proviso here is you got to wait till there's non-runner, no bet. I don't think any firm currently has that for these races. Bet365, as far as I know, have the big 5 races, non-runner, no bet, but no other ones yet. So I'd wait till this Turner's Chase is included in that, and then at that stage, presumably that'll, if that happens to be before the Dublin Racing Festival, all the better for these races if you can find a bookmaker going non-runner, no bet, because everything's going to change after that weekend at Leopardstown. But all things being equal at the moment, 20-1 Saint Sam each way is definitely a play here.
Lovely. And let's just round up the team selections for the Turners, formerly the Marsh, of course. So Stephen going for the favourite, Bob Olinger, but there's some value from Ed with Jungle Boogie and Saint Sam for Vincent. All right then, chaps, thanks a lot for your selections so far. We're going to review these as well on the episodes of Jump To It. We're going to look at how these upcoming races affect our Antepost selections, of course. But if you do place a bet at this stage, as we've alluded to, please just gamble responsibly at this stage. Look out for those non-runner, no-bet offers. And that wraps it up for today's show. Comment below with your own selections for Antepost selections on these races as well. And be sure to check out more content from Irish Racing very soon.